Media doesn't just report reality, it creates it. The people who own media don't just control what you see and hear. They control how you think, what you believe, and what you even recognize as truth. And in America, media isn't evenly owned. It's concentrated. We're talking about thousands of newspapers, radio stations, TV networks, and digital platforms. But ownership is controlled by a relatively small number of corporations. That's not random. That's a monopoly. And when you control media, you don't just control information, you control power, wealth, and influence. Because media doesn't just shape opinions, it directs attention, advertising dollars, political narratives, and economic opportunity. So now think about this. If you don't own the platforms, you don't control the message. And if you don't control the message, you don't control how your community is seen or treated. That means when it comes to Black Americans, representation isn't just limited, it's filtered. Images, stories, and narratives about Black life are often created, approved, or distributed through systems that aren't owned or controlled by Black people. So even when you speak, you're not fully in control. You're speaking when allowed, how allowed, and about what's allowed. And that's what a media monopoly looks like. It creates a situation where Black communities often have to go through non-Black owned platforms just to communicate, whether that's to tell their stories, address issues, or organize around real problems. And here's where it gets deeper. Even when Black-owned media exists, it faces barriers. Because without wealth and ownership, those platforms often depend on advertisers. And those advertisers are usually not Black-owned. So content gets shaped to avoid controversy. Stories get softened. And anything considered too Black risks losing funding. Meanwhile, mainstream media can target nearly 100% white audiences and never be questioned for it. Now look at history. There have been moments where organizations push back. For example, there were efforts to challenge networks for lacking Black representation, even threats of boycotts. But the response wasn't real change because ownership didn't change. And when ownership doesn't change, control doesn't change. Networks didn't forget Black audiences existed. They chose not to include them. That's the difference. So what does all this mean? It means media isn't neutral. It's an extension of economic power. And if one group overwhelmingly owns the media, they shape the narrative of the entire society, how groups are perceived, what issues matter, and what solutions are even considered. So this isn't just about entertainment. It's not just about news. It's about who has the power to define reality and who has to live inside of it. Because when you control media, you don't just tell stories. You decide what people believe and what they never even get the chance to question.